All right, ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Greene, AMTV, shocking news. Now, this won't be a shock to you if you've been following me over the last 15 years, because I've predicted and, of course, warned about this incessantly with over 5,000 videos produced online since about 2008-09. But I had a little time to burn. I was out doing some traveling on business for Island Project. I was out in the beautiful island of Oahu visiting my dad, looking at property, also just spending some good fatherly son time and enjoying life. And so I had some time to burn, and I was listening to podcasts by Lex Fridman, who interviewed Ray Kurzweil. Now, Ray Kurzweil is a former Google executive. He's, of course, written many books, one that stands out called The Singularity is Near. I've read all of them, so I can speak to this very intelligently, and of course, I've known about this for years. People always ask me, Christopher, how do you predict all these events? How did you know the world was going to be shut down in January of 2020? Because I actually pay attention to what these people say, and they always do what they say. They show you what they're going to do before they do it, and also it's in the Holy Bible. And so, by the way, I did miss the sermon yesterday on Sunday because I was flying and I was traveling, and so I will get back to the normal schedule for the Sunday sermons this week. But I will give you a tidbit. The ultimate sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen, was Jesus Christ, the ultimate debt paid for our sin. And so that was what I was going to talk about yesterday. So I'll just share with you like a little brief segment here, because this ties into what we're talking about now. Chips in the body connecting with a mark to the brain, which I'm going to get into in a moment. So the ultimate debt to be paid as Christians is acknowledging the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, our King, and also loving everybody, not just our Christian brothers and sisters, but those that even aim to hurt us, and even the people that are evil in this world, of which there's many, many evil people right now, of course, in charge. But this is all a part of God's plan. So just keep that in mind. We want to save as many lost souls as possible before they meet their imminent demise and eternal separation with the beast, as well, it tells us in the Bible will happen. So let's get into this. So Ray Kurzweil wrote this book called The Singularity. Like and share this, ladies and gentlemen, 1000X, which talks about the merger, the transhuman merger of man with machine. Human beings merging with technology and then becoming like a new alien species with technology. Now, I've argued for years that the elites have already connected themselves with these devices, like the Neuralink, of which Elon Musk is in charge of, and there's other companies like it, some funded by Peter Thiel and others, that are attempting to hardwire chips, microchips, and emitted in this podcast, nanobots with the cerebral cortex, which he describes as a pyramid that will be hardwired to the brain. So you can download books, speak multiple languages, you can become transcendent, like the movies, you can create replications of yourself, AI, artificial intelligence, replications of your consciousness into infantum, so that these people attempt to find the fountain of youth and they attempt to live forever. But here's what's radical about this podcast, which I encourage you to listen to, because all of this is out in the open, ladies and gentlemen. They always tell you what they're going to do. Ray Kurzweil admits, and he's talked about this before, but in a lot more depth on this podcast, which I'll include a link at the end of this video, that it's actually nanobots, microscopic nanochips that will be floating through your body that will actually provide the link to the Neuralink that goes into people's brains in the future, which I believe to be the mark of the beast. And I mean, how could it not be? It says it's going to be in your right arm and then right straight in your forehead. Now, of course, what's crazy about this and radical about this is what they said was nuts in a conspiracy theory years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, when I warned about this, now is just what they're going to do. You see how that worked? No, everyone's going to be microchipped. Everyone's going to have a Neuralink. Everyone's going to have nanochips inside their body and these little robots roaming around. And of course, everybody's going to take the mark in their forehead because we said so. We don't believe in God. And of course, we're in charge. Everybody's going to do it. It's going to be cool. You're going to download languages. You're going to be able to play video games in the metaverse. And all is going to be a bed of roses. And in addition to that, because they control all the narrative and distribution of information, nobody's allowed to ask any questions. So for example, Lex Fridman, who's an MIT guy and is very smart, and I enjoy his podcast, kind of like I enjoy Joe Rogan's podcast, but these guys can never ask an intelligent, combative question of their guests because it's not allowed. And we don't have competing narratives in the United States anymore. It's non-existent. You're not allowed to ask questions about what these people are going to do. So Lex Fridman just sits there and allows Kurzweil to speak as he basically describes a dystopic hell of the general direction of humanity, and how all the things that not just people like me have been warning about, people like you, but what it even tells us in the Bible is where they're leading us to. The second point that Ray Kurzweil made, which is absolutely huge, and I'll have to pick my words very carefully as well on this one, is regarding this right here. He admits that they simulated that, okay, the contents of this within 2 days. Within 2 days, running high-level computer simulation that tested the genes. Who also told you this? I did. I told you this whole thing was a simulation. Of course, supercomputers and D-Wave computers have already run these simulations on human populations, population growth. This runs into media propaganda, all the frameworks of control, brainwashing, psychological warfare, the food supply, energy transition, water supply. All of these things have been simulated. Now, Ray Kurzweil admits this was simulated, the contents of it, in 2 days by running high-intensity simulations via supercomputers that determine, based on genes, what would be the best solution for this. So he admits that as well. And he also says it's the future of medicine and everything else regarding the human body. That's only what I can say. So hopefully you catch the drift here and understand what I'm saying. So he brings up these two radical fundamental points that I've warned about, which are now mainstream and no one's allowed to question. That nanobots literally will be the utility device to connect human beings to the neural lace in your head, a freaking mark. But in addition to that, they've been running simulations that actually determine this, and it only took them 2 days to do it. Now, Joe Biden also, if it's to be believed, alleges that 65% of Americans have taken this, which I don't know if that's to be believed or not, but as I said before, they ran simulations that told them they only need a certain percentage of the human population. Once they hit that gauge, they backed off the pedal a little bit. And that's what I believe that they did. So this is actually a phenomenal, bewildering interview for a lot of people that, of course, are not aware of where the general direction of humanity is going. Because as we've talked about things like Moore's Law, how there's an increasing computational rate of improvement of computer chips and computers themselves since the first computer was invented, which all of this plays into war games as well. Eric Schmidt, who I've met and spoken with a few times, I've been privileged enough to do that, even says today that it's the nanosecond AI, artificial intelligence wars, which really is what World War III is today. And so this is what you need to understand. When I say we're in World War III, we're in World War III now. This is what it is. The war games are being played methodically, fundamentally, and simulatively in a way that's never been done before in world history. Not in World War I, not in World War II. This is World War III. Also notice Joe Biden, after I posted my video, warned that he would actually supply U.S. troops to defend Taiwan in the event, which is imminent, by the way, that China invades. So Biden, or whoever the president is, they're already getting ready to put troops on the defenses, physical troops in Taiwan. He talked about this in the 60 Minutes interview and said he would defend it. Now, the big question here, the big elephant in the room is what's going to happen next. Okay, because something's got to give as the tight rubber band keeps stretching and then it snaps. Something's got to give, like we had Pearl Harbor after the United States placed oil and other embargoes on Japan, which was an economic act of warfare that led to the physical conflict. Same thing's happening now. There's a large sanctioned embargo on the country Russia and Vladimir Putin, which is why he's shutting down the pipeline and energy costs of Nord Stream 1 that supplies all the cleaner natural gas to Europe. We see prices skyrocketing 3 times their normal rate. It's why the UK is arguably in a depression, and as the populations are focused on the Queen, the real focus should be on deteriorating quality of life, no real income and wage growth. So let me bring up this point again, because all these podcasts, Lex Fridman, Joe Rogan, etc., they're never allowed to ask any questions. So Ray Kurzweil talks about how poverty has actually statistically decreased over time, something Americans are not aware of. And he also says cumulative income wage growth has increased, but that's a factual error. That is an ill fact and actually not true. Real wage growth has declined, Ray. Cumulative wages and incomes have increased on paper nominally, but not real wages. You were a lot wealthier if you went back 50 years ago and you were making $5 or whatever it was, $8 an hour, than you are making $20 an hour now with $20 trillion in debt and double-digit record inflation. Goldman Sachs has already put the numbers together in the UK and predicts 22+% inflation in a single year. So although Ray can manipulate these quote-unquote ill facts that cumulative nominal incomes have risen, no, they haven't, because the real value of your dollars have declined, Ray. But again, people like Lex and others, Joe Rogan and others, aren't allowed to ask questions. This is also how they brainwash the public. Of course, governments worldwide, not just the United States, brainwashes its populations through various institutions across all boards and all structures of society. This starts early on with the school system and basically pours into every other institution in the world. Now, of course, we've historically, the easiest example of this is what I call the idiot box, which is your television. In Americans, especially the baby boomer generation, that was the source of information. Of course, in my generation, I was exposed to two veins, not just the idiot box television, which you should not be watching and turn off completely, but also social media. And basically the fragmentation and the very disruptive nature of new media. The problem is, see, I've been doing this 15, 16 years. Social media is now the idiot box, okay? And people need to understand this. All of the social media channels have now been compromised. And the only people allowed to get traction are the Lex Fridmans of the world that are not allowed as journalists, as thinking critical minds, as intellectuals, people that are very smart, or people that might have a conflicting view, is ill-advised and not allowed to be asked. So what you have is an idiotic now population that's being controlled through the new idiot box, okay, which basically only allows a singular one narrative that they've espoused and they've affirmed as the only narrative that there can be, because you're not allowed to think anymore. People like Napoleon Hill, and I'm about to read a new book. I haven't read it yet. My wife was introducing me to it. It's his book that's very controversial, where he has a conversation with the devil. And so I'm actually really excited to read about this, but he calls about the fact that 95% or 99% of the human population are drifters, meaning they're basically drones. They listen to what they're told. They don't think for themselves. They're not outside of the system. They don't take individual action. They have real no bodily, sovereignty over their own thoughts and daily routine. They just do absolutely what they are told by other people that are thinking for them. And that's a perfect description for not just the reality then, but the current reality now. In fact, if you take a look around you, it's like maybe 1 out of every 10 person is actually really a radical, or somebody thinking for themselves or having intelligent thoughts. And see, this is it to me, as an intellectual, as I would consider myself an academic as well, as somebody who I believe is a leader. And number one, tells you about the importance of Jesus and our salvation and that eternal longevity and all of those miracles. What really pisses me off is now the inability to creatively think publicly. And I want you to think about this for a moment, even philosophically. For example, the light bulb never would have been invented if somebody wasn't allowed to come up with different experiments and inventions and think outside the box and make a lot of mistakes, even controversial ones, to get us to the actual product so the light bulb could turn on. But they're creating a world now where you're not allowed to experiment, where you're not allowed to think. We are not allowed, it's the cancel culture. You make one mistake and it's over for you. You're not allowed to truly be a free human thinking brain. Somebody who can actually create amazing things and actually do amazing things simply because you're not one of the 95 or 99% drifters. Now, of course, they'll never get rid of that. They'll control media and the narrative and the idiot boxes and whatever new idiot boxes they come up with. And guess what the new third tertiary idiot box is going to be? The Neuralink that they're going to plant in everyone's head. Now, by the way, they'll sell this as, it's only going to help quadriplegics and people that have, bodily malfunction that can't talk. And although we could say there is some merit to that technology from the standpoint, if you can't articulate or speak, then it would be super cool, obviously, if you could communicate behaviorally in other ways. But what they don't tell you is this third idiot box that they're creating isn't just for them. It's for all of you tuning in. And they plan all of humanity, just like the cell phone has become ubiquitous. And again, you're not allowed to ask any questions about where this is going. You're just being told where this is headed. As Ray Kurzweil is now writing a new book called The Singularity is Nearer, a play on the singularity is near. So this is where it's all headed. Again, this is biblical, as we've been warned about the mark of the beast. It's now being admitted by famous futurists like Ray Kurzweil that yes, nanobots will be put in your body, and they will connect and hardwire these microscopic pieces of technology. And think about it in relation to this. What is capable and possible if this is what he's telling you, that is going to provide the Neuralase that actually communicates with your brain. Who's going to control the Neuralink and the Neuralase? The same people that control these idiot boxes today, that control populations, philosophical, intellectual thought, creativity, subjectivity, and all the things. All right, hopefully I'm back. Give me a thumbs up. My phone just got too hot. Another example about how this technology doesn't work, especially if it's imprinted in your brain. Imagine the errors and all the other things that could happen. Okay, you can hear me now. So what I was leaving off on, which is so apropos, I don't know if I'm saying that incorrectly, is the God gene. So let's just bring this back into the spiritual framework for a minute, just for a minute. I look around me today. Most of the population is more depressed, more locked up in fear and dismay, lacking joy and unhappiness than I have ever seen, honestly, in the history of my short life. And I'm not the only one picking up on this, and it's because Americans, the westernized world, and really global populations at large, but especially in the West, have been so psychologically traumatized by the recent events that it's created a new reality for people in general. And in my view, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a good one at all. And so it all goes back, as to I opened in this video, goes back to God. And this is where I'll leave you. This is what was really interesting. Ray, who talks about creating replications of himself, of AI life in the future, so the consciousness can not only be uploaded into these machines, but replicated at large, has already uploaded his late father's alleged consciousness into a supercomputer, which he is allowed to ask questions to and will respond as a part of that AI technology. And the specific question that Ray asked, as Lex also closes the podcast, was, what's the meaning to life? And you know what his late father, the AI simulation, said? Love. That's what it said, which sounds kind of cliche, as someone would say. And Lex closes the interview and the podcast asking Ray Kurzweil the exact same question. And he defers to his father. And you know what he says? Love. But you know what's so interesting about that? God is love. In fact, there are multiple, dozens of references how God and Jesus Christ himself, the ultimate sacrifice. And again, it tells us to pay our debts. Not just the debt that Jesus Christ paid for all of us tuning in here today, and our sins for our eternal salvation. But we as believers, brothers and sisters, must pay our debts to not just love our brothers and sisters and our Christian brethren, but also the evil people and the ones that are lost, in a very lost, depressed, anxious, and fearful, psychologically brainwashed due to the idiot boxes and that information world. And so I'll leave you with that. Isn't it interesting? And see, I would have mentioned this if I was doing the podcast, that Ray actually quotes God himself and Jesus Christ our King as, without even knowing it, that the meaning to life is actually love, which it also tells us in the Bible, God is love. Because when it all comes down to the end of it, that's all we have. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Christopher Greene. Hopefully that went okay since the broadcast was semi-interrupted as my phone got hot. But the point is, Ray Kurzweil, this futurist of Google, who's writing all these books, and it's been out in the open, wide in the open, and they've told you it's a conspiracy for years, is now just the reality. At the same time, they also now, for the first time, once again, control the narrative across all these information streams. And imagine what happens when a certain percentage of the population takes the Neuralink, which he says nanobots will connect you to, in your body. And gene sequencing, he says, was actually how they figured out the solution to all this stuff. In just a matter of days, becomes the new idiot box. You have billions of the population, if they're still here, if people even survive what's coming, that will be controlled once again with a singular narrative, with the inability to think for themselves, connected to the hive, drone, zombified, singular mind of the same controllers that are in control of everything today. And I don't know about you folks, that sounds like an absolute biblical, dubious, and evil, very predictable nightmare that could only be the eternal desolation of the beast itself. And what the Holy Bible warns us is the mark. So I'll leave you with that. Don't take the mark. As they normalize, everybody's going to take this, according to Ray. Everybody's going to be merging with machines. Everybody's going to have nanobots floating around their body because, it'll be cool. You can finally link your phone to your forehead, guys, and play video games and hang out and learn new languages. No, it won't be cool. It'll be the next level of total eternal damnation and separation from the truth, as we know, is our ultimate debt through our King Jesus Christ. And will be another way of systematic separation and control, which I could only describe to you as hell. And if there's not enough proof in the words that I'm saying, take a look around you, because I see not a lot of joy out there. I see a lot of people not with a vibrant heart, not with the flicker of light. I see a lot of people in this world searching for purpose, that have been dehumanized, that have been beaten down, that are sad, that are joyless, that are separated from their peers, separated from the truth, and separated from what even Ray tells us is the most important truth of being human: love. So how is it, Ray, that we will have more love inserting a freaking microchip into your front cerebral cortex only because you're fearful of what's going to happen to you eternally? Because you want to bring back the dead like a vampire, which he even is talking about. I mean, you lose all the beauty of life, all the beauty of what it means to be a human being. And the real truth is, if you understand Jesus and you understand all this, that we do have eternality, that everything does live forever, only if you're with him. So again, this is going to be a test. Just like Joe Biden says 65% of the population has taken that, imagine how many people worldwide will take the nanobot chips in their forehead. Now again, don't take my word for this. I'll include a link down here in a minute. Go spend an hour and a half, if you've got the time, or jump to the section on nanobots where Ray specifically talks about how this will all be normalized in the future. Because the end goal, and this is what has been happening the last few years, is conditioning the masses for this inevitable turn of events. Anyways, I'm Christopher Greene. God bless. This is why we need to form alternative communities, of course, alternative technologies like the Island Project. By the way, if you're a member of my club, and we've been sending out a lot of hats, my father and I, you can also email me at info@islandproject.com if you're a member of the club or you're a member of our private placement. If you haven't gotten one of these yet, I'll make sure to send them out to you as soon as possible. This is the world that we're leading to, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't know about you, in my short life, I want joy. I want joy in the Lord. I want joy with my family and my friends. I want hope. I want truth. I want light. I want vibrance. And when I look around me, I see most of the population lacking that completely. And guess who's taken away that spark of life in them? All these institutions and all of the idiot boxes of control. So have discernment here and understand that the new idiot box is actually all these podcasts. It's actually social media that's now heavily controlled, where no one's allowed to critically think, ask a freaking question if it doesn't go along with their singular narrative in alignment with the general direction of they want to take the human population. And it just sucks. I mean, imagine even being an academic or professor at a university where you're no longer allowed to even experiment or have an independent mind. This means that there will not be the same new amazing inventions in the future. There won't be the same amazing art. There could never be a renaissance for freedom and liberty if everything is singularly controlled by one freaking narrative. which is actually why I got into social media in the first place, because it was to call the bluff of the establishment. Oh, you can say anything you want online. I'm like, we'll see about that. And so I produced 5,000 videos and built up an audience of near 1 million plus people tuning in around the world. And now they just have a singular narrative again. So now is the time, you digital cowboys and cowgirls out there, to build the new systems. This is the new system, the Island Project. So get in on this, learn about this as well. And then I also just want to hear what your thoughts, questions, comments are in the box below. And again, I'll get to my normal sermons back on Sunday, this coming Sunday when I'm not traveling. Anyways, I love you guys. God bless. By the way, this means hang loose. People are like, Christopher, this means hang loose, guys. Anyways, I love you. Jesus Christ is King.